Hello and welcome to the Simply Smart Business Podcast. I'm your host, Nicki Ong, and I'm so psyched that you're here with me today. Today's pretty special because this is the initial introductory podcast show for the podcast. And so I want to take a minute to introduce myself, get a sense of who your host is, get a sense of my story, a little bit about what you can expect from the rest of the shows. So let's dive right in. So like I said, my name is Nicki, and wow, I think I have a good story to tell. So in 2008, I graduated from college. I was living up in Maine at the time, and I got a great job with a small web design development and marketing company in Portland, Maine. And they were wonderful. And I still to this day love them. And I worked for them as their SEO person. And at the time, I had no idea what SEO was because in 2008, it was not a household name yet. And you may not even have heard it yet, but SEO stands for search engine optimization. And so with my marketing and advertising degree, I did have definitely the foundation and the backbone that I needed to do the job. But my boss and the owner of the company was kind enough to give me a chance. And they always said it was because of the passion that I showed in the interviews. I'm very grateful to them because it gave me my start, honestly. So cut to learning on the job, learn everything I could about SEO. And I very quickly realized that a lot of my clients weren't using the SEO research that I was giving them for their website. So ultimately with SEO, not to geek out about this too much, but in SEO, we want to make sure that we're using the right keywords, doing all the right things on websites to ensure that they rank higher in the search engines. And so very soon I realized that clients were not able to make those changes themselves, and I very soon became a copywriter. And at that time, I didn't see myself as a copywriter, but over time, I finally allowed the title to sink in. And I had always been a writer my whole life. I actually realized recently that I started writing stories in third grade, I can remember, that got published on the school's newsletter. And so I've been writing for a long time. I'd had my own blog for a long time. And so I was very attuned with writing, but of course, website copywriting was a whole nother story. So I learned that on the job, quite literally. And I was also starting to blog for clients at the time. And then around 2011, I took a trip early in the year over the 2010 Christmas to visit my best friend who was living in Florida. And of course, it was the middle of the winter in Maine. I had bought my own house in my 20s, done the whole thing. And I was shoveling my driveway every morning. So I visited my best friend in Florida, and I just thought, wow, I'm so sick of the snow. I do not want to do that anymore. And so I talked with my job, and they were willing to allow me to work remotely. And so I decided to move. I sold the house, and I moved to Florida in like summer 2011. And working remotely was really tough for me. I actually, about 6 months in, almost chose to move back to Maine because it was just really hard. I felt very alone, even though I was living with my best friend at the time. And it was just very lonely, and it was the first time in my life that I've been really fully in charge of my schedule because I didn't necessarily need to work 9 to 5 anymore. I could kind of work whenever other than meetings. And so that learning curve for me was huge. And I was in my 20s. I didn't have too much self-discipline as far as time management yet. And so I had to learn a lot of those skills again on the job, which I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us do, right? We learn on the job a lot. So then about a year or two later, maybe Portland, Maine company job came to me and said, we've loved this arrangement, but honestly, after kind of feeling it out, we really want somebody in-house and here, boots on the ground. And I said, I totally understand. So we slowly phased out. I think I moved to like part-time and then super part-time, which was great because then I added on actually a couple more roles that were part-time. I found a couple of local companies where I was doing marketing for them, and I was able to go into the shop a couple hours a week. And then I started having this moment where I was like, I really enjoy the SEO copywriting side of things, and I was doing more general digital marketing with the other part-time jobs. And I thought, I need to do something with this. I was also getting a lot of requests for subcontracting work and freelancing work. And I actually called up the Portland company and said, hey, look, I'm getting these asks. I want to make sure that it's okay that I am taking on these jobs because I don't want there to be a conflict of interest or anything like that. So shortly thereafter, I ended up deciding, hey, I've always known I want to be an entrepreneur at some point in my life. I just thought it would be later in life. Maybe once I hit my 30s, 40s, kind of do my time and then earn the role of entrepreneur. But I thought, well, I've got all these freelancing clients now. I almost had enough to quit the other jobs at that point, and I'm really enjoying it. So I thought, hey, now or never, I'm going to jump with both feet. I'm going to go for this. And I did. And I opened up what was Red Vine Web Studio at the time in 2013. And I loved it. And there were definitely, ups and downs with it. At first I was barely making ends meet, barely making enough to do it full time, but I did it and I worked through it. And then, ended up meeting my husband, my now husband, and then we had our son in 2019. And that's where things really changed for me again, was I decided that year that I wanted to rebrand the business. When I started Red Vine Web Studio, I was initially working with my younger brother, who's a fabulous web designer and developer. And so I was managing a lot of website projects, and I realized I really don't enjoy that part of it. Project management is just not fun for me. So I decided that, as my brother actually got a full-time role at another company and we kind of parted ways amicably, certainly, that I was going to rebrand the business, and it was only going to be SEO, copywriting, and blogging. And that's what I did. And my husband and I decided that I would stay home with my son, since I worked from home anyway with my own business and I could choose my hours. Initially, I thought the only way to mother was to put your kid in daycare so that you could also have time to run your business. But I was pleasantly surprised, and certainly good and bad ways, that I could do it, that I could be home with my son and run my business. And you know what? I went from working 40, 50, probably sometimes 60 hours a week to about 20 hours a week, 15 to 20 hours a week. And you know what? In 2019, after my son was born, I not only more than halved my time that I was working, but I actually doubled my revenue that year. And it's been growing ever since. And I'm so proud and so lucky to say that I was able to stay at home with my son for the first 3 years of his life before he started going to part-time daycare so that he could get that socialization. But I'm still the, primary caretaker for him, and he's my priority aside of my business. That's where I am today. Now he's in kindergarten and thriving, and I'm able to be here and working from home. And this year, I love creative outlets. I always have. And so this year I decided I wanted to start this podcast because I think it's important as entrepreneurs to be able to see what everybody else is doing to a certain extent, what other marketers are doing, what's working for them, what's not working for them. And I truly, in my soul, believe that rising tides raise all ships. And so I wanted to create something where I could speak with other experts and we could have a casual, fun conversation about what we're doing outside of our little bubbles, right? Because we sort of all get in these little bubbles where we're, excuse me, where we're working and focused on, our immediate circle, our clients, our colleagues, but we don't necessarily, even though you do all the research and you read all the articles in your industry, you don't necessarily know what everybody else is doing. And so I want this to be a place where like minds can come together, learn, share ideas, and grow ultimately. So that's my goal for the podcast. My business name is Simple Sprout Studio. And so Simply Smart Business just kind of fell from that, because ultimately one of my goals in business is to ensure that any advice I give or any tactic that I use is simple, because I feel like in business, we make things so complicated a lot of the time that we lose out on the core of what matters and what is actually working versus what isn't working. And so along the way, you'll get exposure and you'll get to listen to a lot of incredible entrepreneurs, their stories. Like I said, we're just going to have casual conversations about what's working for them, what's not working for them. And I think you'll see that there's a lot of similarities with your story, and it's giving you that feeling of, oh, I'm not alone in this. And then there's also going to be a lot of different tactics and ideas that maybe you haven't thought of before that are interesting and unique and often simple that maybe you didn't think of. And I hope that your main takeaway is that, again, that you're not alone. And number two, that you can walk away with some real actionable advice that actually is going to work for you and work for your business or work for the company that you're working with. I believe that in the coming days that we're going to have some just incredible conversations. I've already got a lineup of some amazing entrepreneurs and marketers for you. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to be on this journey with you. The other thing that I did want to mention before I let you go today is some things that you'll see along the way from are kind of my pillars and important things to me in my business. Number one is that simplicity. You'll always get as simple as possible, as sort of down to earth, down and dirty. What does this actually mean for me and my business, right? Don't like the corporate jargon. I don't like the business speak where we're using crazy words that don't make any sense to most of us. It's just, what does this actually mean and what impact can it make for my business? Another core pillar of mine is being honest. I always want to be honest and transparent with you. So you'll definitely find that here. Also, creativity. I think that creativity breeds more creativity, and that's what really sets us apart. I also believe in the little things in the details. So I think you'll see a lot of these experts where we kind of dive into things outside of business. Like a couple of the interviews you'll see, we're talking about motherhood and being a mompreneur, because that's of course near and dear to my heart. And I believe that as women, especially, that we can just do amazing things, and men can too. But as a woman, I think it's important to put that message out there that moms and women we can change the world. And last but not least, education. And that's where this podcast really comes in, is that educational spirit. I've always been a speaker my whole life. I was a cheerleader all through high school and college, and then went on to being a college cheerleading coach for many years. And it's really important to me to be able to not only cheer on my clients and cheer on my colleagues, but also to share that wealth, to be able to get on a stage, educate people, get on a podcast, get on a webinar, and just share my knowledge and hopefully help somebody else. So that is what this podcast is going to be about. I'm so thrilled that you're here again. Please subscribe, leave a review as you listen to more episodes. They'll be coming out at least weekly, if not more. Like I said, I've got a ton of amazing experts lined up for you, and I'm just so thrilled for you to be able to hear them. So thank you for being at the Simply Smart Business Podcast, and I'll see you next time.